Fire and ice, Robert froze. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and will suffice. Hello everyone, it's me Indah, and now I'm going to do analysis to poetry by Robert Frost, Fire and Ice. Fire and Ice is poetry consists of 9 lines alternating between 3 rhyming sound ABA, ABC, BCB, being the rhyming summary for Fire and Ice. It is a narrator describing the end of the world by their own vision. Frost tells us that he has heard some people say that the world will end in fire, while others reckon it will end in ice. In other words, the world will either burn up or freeze up, but from the poetry, Frost is more into fire. So let's analyze each of the lines. So the first 2 lines is, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. These first 2 lines describe the thoughts in general society about how the world will end. In a modern sense, fire could mean a war or a nuclear disaster, and ice could mean the climate change. However, it is largely a metaphoric that could mean different kind of interpretation. Ice and fire itself isn't opposite from one another. It could interpret how the people in society have entirely different views of apocalypse. Next line. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. In this next 2 lines, the author provides their own opinion. They quiet fire with desire, which can be viewed as greed, passions, and rage. Fire is being used as a metaphor for strong, consuming emotions such as desire. Small fire like candle can bring you warmth, feeling, and light. In the same way, small desires are no trouble at all and can motivate people to achieve things in their life. On a large scale, however, fire consumes and destroys, and so too are desires. The next line. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. This line shows that the author also has concern in their mind about the world ending with ice. At first, they believed that the world will ending in burn, but if it didn't and the fire wasn't enough, then they believed the ice could manage it as well. They think of it as something that would chill the world, slow it down, and isolate its individual enough that the human race simply couldn't survive it. Okay, after reanalyzing each of the line, now let's move on to the figurative language. The first is symbolism. Symbolism is the key of the poem because the author makes fire as a symbol of desire, patience, and ice as a symbol of hate or hatred when the speaker relates fire to desire and ice to hatred, or in a modern sense, it could mean climate change. I knew that fire and ice are symbols for human behavior and emotions. The symbols are taken into broad scheme of the world, especially the war that was occurring. Besides, it can also be applied into our daily life as a warning against vices of desires and hatred in personal connections. Next is imagery. Fire and ice have different meaning in this poem. For example, fire means feeling of heat, burning and pain. Ice means cold, communication and hate. These images are well created by the author to draw attention in form of warning sign. Next is alliteration. The repetition of initial sounds on the same line or stanza, it can be seen on line 1 and 2, some say, and line 4, which is favor fire. Next is tone and mood. The tone of the poem is ironic in the text because the author reveals that both fire and ice are equally destructive, although in the last line it is a bit ironic for the ability of ice. While the mood of the poem is clinical and almost objective, but ambiguous and confused as the speaker weighs up the various benefits of ice and fire. But at the end of the poem, it is not clearly stated which element is greater to destroy the world and how the world will end. Okay, after we analyze It's of the lines. Now let's end the figurative language. Now let's move to the author's background. Robert Lee Frost, March 26, 1874 to January 29, 1963, was an American poet. His work was initially published in England before it was published in the United States. Known for his realistic depictions of rural life and his command of American colonial speech, Frost frequently wrote about settings from rural life in New England in the early 20th century, using them to examine complex social and philosophical themes. Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime and is the only poet to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. He became one of America's rare public literary figures, almost an artistic institution. He was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in 1960 for his poetry works. On July 22, 1961, Frost was named Poet Laureate of Vermont. Robert Frost's personal life was plagued by grief and loss. In 1885, when he was 11, his father died of tuberculosis, leaving the family with just $8. Frost's mother died of cancer in 1800. In 1920, he had to commit his younger sister Jenny to a mental hospital where she died 9 years later. Mental illness apparently ran in Frost's family, as both he and his mother suffered from depression, and his daughter Irna was committed to a mental hospital in 1947. Frost's wife Elina also experienced both of depression. From here, I can see that the author's personal life does have some impact on his writing. For example, in the poetry that I choose, Fire and Ice, it is talking about how the world will end. I think a person with a good mental health and positive environment wouldn't talk about something like this. And in his other poetry, he tends to mention about death in his poetry. I think this is all caused by his depressions that run in his family. Alright, that's all my analysis about the poetry Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. I hope you enjoy and see you in the next analysis. Thank you.